Welcome back to the Texas Truck Channel. Behind me I have something very special, and that is Mazda's very first electric vehicle. Yes, it's been kicked in the teeth by the YouTube comments on other videos I'm sure you've already watched, but I'm here to tell you that it's way better than you think, and we will talk about its intended purpose at the very end of this video. It'll make a lot more sense then. But for now, let's talk about the exterior. Quick look at it. It clearly rides on the wheelbase of a CX-30, but it looks completely different. It doesn't follow the same kind of pointy nose that you find on the other Mazda products. It actually departs from the traditional Mazda look that you see on the CX-5, the CX-30, the Mazda 3, all of them. Kind of does its own thing. It kind of looks special, and especially on this back emblem, I love that it has embossed Mazda and it says electric there. I love that the power rear gate is, oh wait, not power, it's just regular lift gate. There's something simple and charming about it. You do have a two-door look, but it's actually a rear hinge clamshell door. It's actually 4 doors, so it's a second row vehicle. It's not huge, it's not trying to be, and that's not its goal. So, before we get too far down the road, let's jump in the interior and see what Craig has to think about that.
Thank you, Brian, for the intro to the exterior, and I love what you had to say about how it doesn't follow the corporate Mazda on the face and the nose. And moving on to the interior, this 4-door, the same thing's going on in here. We got a whole different thing going on than we do in the other Mazdas. You do get the corporate goodness. The steering wheel's great, the heads-up display is great, the infotainment works, it's flawless. The headlights are amazing. Please, Mazda, talk to all the other manufacturers and teach them how to make headlights. But moving on to the rest of the interior, this is where it differentiates, and it's really cool. You get this really neat textile side panel. You get it in the seats. You get this nice orange trim through the center, and then on the sides, kind of leather on the sides, but cloth in the middle. But then what's neat about that orange in the center and on the sides is it matches the cork kind of interspersed throughout the interior, from the grab handle to the center console, to the cup holders that flip up and down for a pad / cup holder. It kind of is a unique, cool thing going on there. And what's neat about that is that cork is a throwback to the heritage of Mazda's original factory and what they used to make, and that was corks. They used to make corks, and so those that are in the Mazda genre and game, you use cork sport parts and all that fun stuff. That's coming into play here, and that's pretty cool. As far as the usefulness of the interior, the rear is really just for an emergency only, but it's functional. It's got a center armrest in the rear. That's pretty cool. Up front, plenty comfortable, plenty of headspace. You can see better than you can out of the CX-30, even though it's on the same bones as the CX-30, and all that's great. With that, let's move into the shop and see what makes this puppy go a little bit, but not very far. So let's get into that. Welcome to the under the hood portion of the Mazda MX-30, Mazda's first stab at an all-electric powertrain, and let's dive into that a little bit because there's a lot of good things going with that. But first, Mazda does what everybody does, and they try to hide their power plant. This thing's big. I want to take this cover off. I want you to see how big that is. I mean, that thing is, look at that. So I want to make sure we don't miss that. Also, they've left you a lot of space to store some things, as Brian will demonstrate here. Now, let's talk about the good. We get a Hitachi motor and a Panasonic battery. That battery is a 35.5 kilowatt battery, which is good. Should charge quick. Shouldn't take long to recycle that sucker. Let's go, right? Also, 200 pound-feet of torque. That's what I'm talking about in a small little car like this. The bad news is that onboard AC charger is only 6.6 kilowatts, and it takes a long time to charge. When you run this sucker down, then the computer will tell you it's going to take over 16 hours to charge it on 110. And I can just go ahead and confirm that's how long it actually takes. Now, you can up the charger to a level 2 charger, and it will definitely charge quicker, but you're never going to charge more than 30 amps out of the sucker, so even that's not a whole lot quicker. Speaking of charging, we've been charging this with the Electron level 2 40 amp charger, and Electron is so smart that it knows it can't charge higher than 30 amps in this bad boy, and then it hovers between 29 and 30 the entire time you charge it. So thank you, Electron, for making that easy. It's also only good for 91 mpge. This is not an efficient EV, but there's some saving grace. Brian's going to get into that because this thing is huckable and tossable, and it's got some Mazda fun with that. Let's see what makes it do that when we get to the suspension section.
All right, boys and girls, it's time for our favorite part. The rubber 215 55 18 Falcons. These puppies are highway tires, as you can tell. They surprisingly have a 360 tread wear rating, which is god-awful soft for an eco-rated tire. That might explain the MPGE rating we're dealing with a little bit. But they are quiet and they are good handling tires. The sidewall is proper on those. Doesn't ride poorly, but turns in really well. We've liked them a lot. Now, down to the mechanics of it. We've seen this before. You've seen our CX-30 videos, you've seen all the Mazda stuff, the Mazda 3, it's all the same stuff. Strut design up front, rear steer with a lower L-arm and a floating 2-piston caliper up front, 1 piston in the rear. This being a 2-wheel drive variant, it does get the torsion beam rear end, not a multi-link independent rear. But I'm here to say that it rides and drives and handles totally fine. You can also tell that this has the G vectoring control that the gas cars have as well. It is here and it works. Let's get it on the road and show you how that does.
We're in the Mazda hip future.
Yes, we are.
We've talked about how little there is underneath there. Let's see what happens when you mash it.
Now, unlike other EVs, you can brake boost it.
Okay. A good initial surge. Pretty strong pull of 30.
Not bad.
40,
50.
It's still
Still going?
There
60.
we go. Okay.
And what was that?
8.67.
Okay. That's enough.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I'll be honest, it feels faster than that.
Look, for an electric motor that makes that little of power, that's not terrible.
Yeah, 143 horse as a reminder, 200 torque. The torque is there, and I will say it has this fun dial on the left that dances around while you're on throttle and decel and stuff. And this does the same thing that some other EVs do. It doesn't give you all the torque off the line.
No.
It fades it in.
Yep. I'm sure so you don't roast the tires.
But that's what I'm trying to do here. Anyways, that's the fun part. But I will say, unlike some other EVs, you actually hear the electric motor running, which is good and bad. It kind of gives you a little charm, a little character, but also kind of feels like the tram at the airport that takes you from gate to gate, like like the electric train that goes around Atlanta. That's what that feels like, or sounds like. And I will say, on the highway after a long time, you kind of go, can we just turn that off?
It is has some economy car feels to it at times with that whine and a little bit more road noise than some other Mazdas we've been in of late.
But there's also the charm factor too.
It is part of the charm factor. It is a small tossable car.
Yes.
So why don't you get into that?
I'm glad you brought that up. Because the battery is not massive, it is light.
It is light for an EV.
For an EV. And we've driven some other EVs recently that feel like they've got a giant battery pack, because they do. And so when you have that 100-mile range, the trade-off is, as an urban runabout, which is the goal for this, it drives really good.
Yeah.
And you know, we love the CX-30, and we feel like it's the sweet spot in the Mazda lineup. And the CX-50 are both kind of like really tossable, interchangeable. CX-5, it has all that goodness still in here.
Yeah.
So it turns in well. You still have the G vectoring control. Actually, we used to be able to control to rotate the car through corners.
There's some of the Mazda fun stuff in here. Yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. So everything you've expected from that is here.
Right.
The only difference is that you've got EV propulsion, and you know, it's got enough torque, but it's not the fastest thing ever.
It is not the fastest thing that's been around, but it's unique and it's quirky, like you keep saying.
Yeah.
And they've done some EV fun, quirky things in here too with the HVAC controls. They don't do that in any other car.
No, that's specific to this.
That's just because this is an EV and you have to be different.
It's got to be different, right?
One of the things I do like, and I forgot to mention this in my interior segment, but now that we're driving around, it's reminded me.
Okay.
There's no peanut black.
Oh, I'm glad you brought that up, actually. So many brands love to use that, and that's one of those things that in the studio, that sounds great. But after 5 seconds in the real world, it's scratched up by kids or dogs or adults or whatever.
I get it. It looks richer than the matte black plastic. Sure, it looks less plasticky initially.
But after 2 days, the matte black looks great.
Yes, it still looks new.
It looks awesome. So I'll give it that. It does give you, it feels premium in here. It has the same infotainment that we've gotten used from Mazda. Ergonomically, this is a driver's point. I've got plenty of headroom, and I'm a taller driver, even with the sunroof. I just think it has the right amount of funk to be unique, but not too funky. I don't want to be seen in it.
Last thing, before we go through our closing comments, I also want to add that I think it's the simplicity that's still in here as well.
Sure.
From the moonroof to just manually, you slide the little cover back.
Right. It's not
the rear hatch is you just open it.
Just open it.
Things like that. It's kind of a simplistic car, and it's refreshing.
It is. We've time after time closed that gate and gone, well, that was easy.
Yeah.
And so, you know, like, we like that. Kudos to Mazda. I'm glad it's there. Let's go back to the shop and wrap this thing up, because I've got some points I want to make about it.
Let's do it. All right, so here we are with the MX-30, and it's got torque vectorings, and so front-wheel drive, maybe a decent approach angle. Brian?
Probably not, but we'll find out here real quick.
Hill test? Are we going to do it?
Absolutely, we're going to try for 10 feet. Let's see what happens.
Okay, let's see what happens. So I'm going to definitely spot him, make sure we don't rip the front chin off of this, because this is not ours, and it's a nice Mazda. We don't want to ruin it, so let's see what happens. Struggling a little bit. hadn't got real far. We still got a ways to go, but let's see here. And it's clearly not really wanting to go. The traction's not really designed for that. Okay, further up.
Alright, let's try traction control on.
Okay, traction control on. Let's see what happens now. Oh, okay, a little better. Spinning less, but not real control.
Yeah, I'm not involved anymore.
Okay, so Ron, what do you think? You think we're gonna have to call it?
I think this proves that all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive is really needed for this.
Yeah,
or tons of ground clearance and a big tire.
Yeah, as much as we want it to happen, it's not in the cards, and we gave it our go though. So there you go. Brian, our first Mazda EV experience.
That's right.
Not exactly what one would have expected of Mazda.
Not what I was expecting for sure.
And objectively, we talked about all the numbers in that ride and drive. It's not a good EV.
Not a good EV, but subjectively, it's fun to drive. I really like to drive it.
And yes, and that's where we think objectively, this is just a good car.
Yeah, it just is. You know, the more time we spend with it, we're both going, well, why is that so fun? And it's the Mazda Zoom Zoom that we joke about being gone all the time. Somehow this has found some of it.
It's almost like it's more simple than some of the others they make.
Like the hatch is not power. And like you hear the EV motor for better or worse. You hear it running and doing things. And if you really try, it'll blow the front tires off because it's not reining you in so much that it's not fun.
For an EV, it drives like a normal car.
And that's it. We've had another EV in the same time frame as this, and they feel completely different. This is clearly built on a gas platform.
And you can tell.
It's more normal and better because of that.
Right. But talk about its competition.
Okay, good. So look, this is Texas Truck Channel. This is kind of a confusing car for us because in a rural environment, for yourself, for example, we had a real hard time getting this thing to your house.
And back
with charging intervals in between without taking the level 2 charger that we were using for another car as well at the same time that we were shooting. So,
but this is a California only car.
That's exactly where I was going to go. This is not made for Texas.
No.
Flat out. In fact, you can't buy this car in Texas. You have to buy this in California, and it's made for a market that simply doesn't exist here.
Right.
So take all those criticisms and throw them away. This car is for the person living in San Fran or LA in tons of traffic. They want something nice, and 100 miles is more than enough for them.
Right.
That's what it's for. So its competition is limited. We're going to exclude anyone that has sales outside of California.
Yep.
So you're talking about at one point the Smart EV.
Yep.
The 500e, the Fiat 500e.
The Golf.
And the Golf E.
Yep.
And that's it.
And they all had about a 100-mile range, and we're about $30,000.
Right. And so this actually is right where it belongs.
Right.
Now this is 38 including destination, this particular car.
Sure.
But that's not including federal rebates and all that kind of stuff. So, which not all brands have that anymore. Mazda still has that rebate going.
Because they haven't made very many EVs. Exactly. And that's what I think we need to close with. This is Mazda's first stab at it.
Yeah.
What they're doing with this car is they've made something that works and it gets its competition in California.
Totally.
Price-wise, it's in that ballpark. But they're also learning a lot from this for their future EV platforms that are to come.
That's a good point. This is not a Tesla or a company that said, we're a startup, we're doing EVs. No. They've been doing petroleum their entire life, right? So this has kind of been a fun car for them, and something that you've pointed this out off camera a lot. There's a lot of talk about a rotary component coming to this, making this a hybrid effectively. The rotary would be a generator for the EV system. If that were the case, now it's a nationwide car.
Right, and there's plenty of room in that engine bay, is all I'm saying, from maybe a 3-rotor straight pipe design.
13B, baby. Wastegate through the hood. Let's do this.
With that, thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more EVs and trucks and all that fun stuff on Texas Truck Channel.
Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.